Thank you. Honourable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that this virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up their hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chair to the members requesting to speak. Lastly, when using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Honourable members, the first item on the order paper is a first reading debate on the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Amendment Bill. I now recognise the member in charge of this private member's bill, the Honourable James.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Action SA's Zero Tolerance Corruption Bill has been in development for more than a year as part of its broader anti-corruption reform package. It flows directly from our policy commitment to declare corruption public enemy number one. But this bill is also deeply personal. It is shaped by what I have witnessed since arriving in Parliament more than 2 years ago, and by the many stories I hear from ordinary South Africans whose lives have been destroyed by corruption. The destruction caused by corruption is not distant or abstract. Every year, according to the Public Service Accountability Monitor, between 27 billion and 100 billion is stolen through corruption in South Africa. And the truth is, we are simply not angry enough. Because when corruption steals billions, our communities pay the price. When I conduct oversight at the police stations on the Cape Flats and find that only one working police vehicle servicing tens of thousands of residents while gangs terrorize communities, that is a consequence of corruption. When our roads become more pothole than road, that is the consequence of corruption. When the National Drug Master Plan receives only a few million rand to fight the devastating scourge of addiction, tearing our mums, our families, and our communities apart, that too is the consequence of corruption. When there are not enough social workers to rescue children from the pelapos, that is a direct consequence of corruption. So what have we done? When individuals accused of corruption appear before parliamentary committees and are greeted as heroes and as grootman, we must confront the painful truth. As a parliament, as the people's representatives, we have allowed a culture to develop that rewards corruption instead of punishing it. There is no fear of consequences. People commit corruption openly and because they know that in many cases, nothing will happen to them. And if they are caught too often, the punishment amounts to little or more than just a slap on the wrist. Corruption has become a high reward, a low risk crime. So kan dit nie aangaan nie. We must change that. This is where this bill intervenes. At its core, this bill does three critical things. Firstly, it introduces mandatory minimum sentences for acts of corruption, something that South Africa has never had before. These minimum sentences are linked to the level of court in which the cases are tried. The Magistrates Court, we propose a minimum sentence of 5 years, regional, a minimum sentence of 15 years, High Court, a minimum sentence of 18 years. The message is clear. Corruption will no longer be treated lightly. Courts must impose sentences appropriate to the seriousness of the offense, with lesser sentences permitted only in exceptional circumstances. Second, the bill doubles the fine for those who fail to disclose that they have been blacklisted to 500,000, while increasing the possible prison sentence from 3 years to 5 years. Third, The bill lowers the reporting threshold for fraud and forgery from 100,000 to 30,000, placing a stronger obligation on accounting officers to report corruption before it becomes another massive scandal. In short, the bill begins to end an era of impunity. It ensures that the culture of corruption, paying, must come to an end, but there's much more work to do. That is why Action SA has developed our anti-corruption reform package. It includes our fallen whistleblower bill, our blacklist corruption supplier bill, and today the zero tolerance corruption bill and future legislation to reform the NPA. We do this with a clear understanding that we must take a holistic approach to combating corruption, protecting those who expose it, strengthening prosecution of it, and ensuring that committing corruption carries stern and unavoidable consequences. For me, this morning, it is a great honor and it is a privilege to take up this fight to ensure stern and unavoidable consequences, secure in the knowledge of the coordinated work of my other Action SA colleagues. For the residents of the Cape Flats who call the police and wait hours for a van that never comes, for businesses and residents whose lives are disrupted because basic services are collapsing around them, for those struggling in addiction who left without support that they desperately need, for the children trapped in the Pela Posa waiting for help that almost never arrives, and for the millions of South Africans who simply want to see those who steal from the public held accountable and placed behind bars in orange overalls where they belong. So I ask every party in this House to seriously consider where we as a nation, we are as a nation. Do we support the continued erosion of our social and moral fabric through corruption, or do we support strong, unavoidable consequences for those who commit it? Do you support corruption, or are you willing to fight it? The people of South Africa are watching us closely this morning at this moment, and we dare not fail them. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable members, in terms of Rule 285(4)(a), there is no speakers list for first reading debates, and members may not speak for longer than 3 minutes upon being recognised by the presiding officer. I will now recognise political parties in the same sequence that we use for declarations of vote to make their input for 3 minutes at a time. Before I proceed, I see there is a hand. The Honourable Radio, why do you want to be recognised?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the time limit, as we were informed by the table, for declarations, its normal declaration time is 4 minutes. Please clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's the same sequence as declarations, but input is limited to 3 minutes for all parties. So every party has 3 minutes. Thank you. So firstly, we recognise the MK Party.
Good morning, Chairperson. Thank you for the opportunity. I greet you all in the name of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Honourable Chairperson, the Mkhonto Sizwe Party welcomes the opportunity to debate the Prevention and Combating of the Corrupt Activities Amendment Bill. The MK Party has no sympathy for corruption. We have no sympathy for those who steal public money, and we have no sympathy for those who use political office, government contracts, and public institutions to enrich themselves. Corruption is not a victimless crime. Every rand stolen is a classroom not built, a hospital that does not receive equipment, a road that is not repaired, and a South African family denied a better life. We therefore support the principle of stronger consequences for corruption. But, Honourable Chairperson, we must not fool the people. South Africa does not suffer from a shortage of laws against corruption. South Africa suffers from a shortage of enforcement. We already have PRECA, we have the Hawks, we have the NPA, we have the Special Investigating Unit, we have the Asset Forfeiture Unit, we have the Auditor General, yet corruption continues. So the question is not simply how many years will a convicted corrupt person spend in prison. The real question is, why are corrupt people not being arrested, prosecuted, and convicted in the first place? This bill proposes tougher minimum sentences and seeks to lower the reporting threshold for for certain offences from 100,000 to 30,000. That is welcome. But if we increase the number of matters reported without increasing investigative and prosecutorial capacity, we risk creating more dockets without more convictions. MK Party therefore calls for a complete anti-corruption chain: detection, investigation, prosecution, conviction, asset recovery, imprisonment, and permanent consequences for those who abuse public office. We also need accountability for officials who deliberately sit on credible corruption allegations, because corruption flourishes not only because corrupt people steal, it flourishes because people in authority sometimes allow them to steal. We must recover stolen assets. We must expose its beneficiaries. We must follow the money. And we must stop treating corruption as an occasional scandal. It is an assault on the Republic. Therefore, MK Party supports the objective of strengthening the law, but we demand that Parliament goes further. We want consequences and that are real, enforcement that is relentless, and a state that is incapable of protecting the corrupt. South Africa does not need another piece of legislation that looks tough on paper. South Africa needs a state that is tough enough to put the corrupt behind bars. I thank you. Vote MK on the 4th of November. Thanks.
Thank you. The EFF.
Thanks so much, Chairperson. Thanks so much, Chairperson. Honorable members, Chairperson, the EFF rises to declare its support for the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Amendment Bill. We support this bill because corruption in South Africa is not simply a criminal problem. It's a class problem. It is a political problem. It is a problem of elitism and the protection of powerful interests. For too long, our country has operated a two-tier system of justice, one law for the poor and another for the politically connected, wealthy, and powerful. As poor South African can spend years in prison for minor offense, while those who steal millions from the public purse, often connected to the current regime or its allies, use their wealth and influence to delay justice and escape with lenient consequences. And let us be clear, corruption did not end with the Zuma presidency. It persisted under the current administration of President Ramaphosa, whose tenure has been met by scandals such as digital vibes, COVID-19 PPA corruption, investigations involving the National Lotteries Commission, NSFAS, Eskom, Transnet, and many more. The unresolved questions surrounding Phala remain a stark reminder that no individual, regardless of position, should be above scrutiny. The EFF stance is simple: no person, including the president, must receive special treatment when serious allegations involving money, security, or public office arise. Accountability must be universal. The era of state capture revealed how political power and private interests can work in tandem to undermine our institution. The Zondo Commission exposed great failures at Eskom, Transnet, and other state-owned entities, demonstrating that corruption remains entrenched at the highest level of government. This is why the EFF supports stronger mandatory consequences for serious corruption. There can be no impunity. If someone steals money meant for hospital, they are depriving sick patients for medicines. If they steal from municipalities, they deny communities access to water. If they loot schools, they steal the future of our children. Corruption is an attack on the working class and the poor. We welcome the reduction of the mandatory reporting threshold from 100,000 to 30,000. There must be no hiding corruption in government offices, boardrooms, or internal communities anymore. We also support measures for strong accountability for those who deliberately ignore corruption, silence whistleblower, or conceal audit findings. Because chairperson's silence in the face of corruption is not neutrality, it is complicity. Parliament must also empower law enforcement agencies, including the Hawks, with sufficient investigators, forensic specialists, technology, and resources. Without capacity, even the strongest laws are ineffective on paper. Protecting whistleblower is crucial. The murder of Babita Decoram remains a painful reminder of the risk faced by those who dare to expose corruption. The EFF support this bill because we reject a society where the poor are punished for survival while elites are shielded for their crimes. We reject political connections as a substitute for justice. We reject corporate boardrooms and safe havens for corruption. And we reject the idea that billions stolen from our poor can be reduced to negotiations between the lawyers. The public purse belongs to the people. Whether you are a minister,
Thank
municipal
you, Honourable
officer,
Member. Your time has
company
now
director,
expired.
billionaire, or
Thank
politically
you.
connected individual,
Honourable
if you steal
Member.
from the poor, you must
Kindly
face
allow
the
her
full
to
might of the law.
conclude.
The
Honourable
EFF support
Member.
this bill. The era of impunity must end.
Honourable
I
Member,
thank you,
your time
Chairperson.
has now expired. Thank you. The IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Corruption is not a victimless crime. Every rand that is lost through corruption is a rand that cannot be used to improve schools, hospitals, infrastructure, local government, or the lives of ordinary South Africans. A government that seeks to reduce poverty, inequality, and unemployment must first ensure that public resources are protected and that those who abuse their positions face the meaningful consequences. The Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Amendment Bill responds to this kind of challenge by strengthening the consequences for corruption offenses and lowering the reporting threshold for certain offenses from 100,000 to 30,000 rand. Corruption and financial misconduct cannot be confronted only once they reach the largest amounts. Smaller acts of fraud, abuse can also undermine institutions and erode public trust. However, tougher sentences will mean little for increasing public trust if the state cannot detect, investigate, and prosecute corruption effectively. Lowering the reporting threshold will potentially bring more matters into the criminal justice system. We must therefore closely monitor if existing institutional capacity will be sufficient to deal with this increased responsibility. The IFP welcomes this bill, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. The PA.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. Honorable members, as this amendment bill is presented in good faith, there are, however, some issues with these amendments. The first would be the unconstitutional infringement of judicial independence, the introduction of right mandatory minimum sentence ranging from 5 years in the magistrate's court to life imprisonment in High Court. It strips the judiciary of its constitutional discretion by removing a judge's ability to weigh the unique mitigation factors of an individual's case. The bill risks imposing disproportionate punishment that violate the right to a fair trial. Second, overburdening the justice system, lowering the mandatory reporting threshold under Section 34 from 100,000 to 30,000 rand will flood law enforcement agencies with low-level financial infractions. The Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, the Hawks, and the National Prosecuting Authority are already facing severe resource constraints. Clogging the system with minor reporting obligations will dilute focus away from high-level systematic state capture and grand corruption. Thirdly, negative economic and administrative impact. The steep escalation of financial penalties to 500,000 rand and extended jail time for minor administrative compliance failures in procurement. Blacklisting creates an environment of over-regulations. Instead of deterring corrupt actors, it places a punitive administrative burden on small, medium, and micro enterprises and local municipalities that lack sophisticated compliance framework. We should consider alternative recommendation. The current Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act already provides a robust statutory framework to prosecute corruption. The collapse of corruption cases in South Africa is not caused by a lack of severe legislative penalties, but rather by a systematic weakness in investigative capacity, forensic auditing resources, and prosecutorial implementation. In conclusion, the amendment bill should be revisited. An alternative recommendation should be taken into consideration. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. FF Plus.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. House Chair, the Freedom Front Plus has no objection to this amendment bill by the Honourable James and Action SA, and it is most welcome. The Honourable Hendricks is mistaken. There's nothing wrong with imposing minimum sentences, and the proposal in this amendment bill with regards to stricter and more serious sanctions for corrupt activities are most welcome, and that should be supported by this House. Section 34 of the Principal Act obligates reporting of theft, fraud, extortion, and forgery of 100,000 Rand to the DPCI, the Hawks. The Hawks are already understaffed and underfunded, and we know how long investigations by the DPCI takes. And the decrease of that obligated amount of 100,000 to 30,000 Rand will have the unintended consequence of flooding the DPCI with even more backlogs and cases. But that does not mean that it should not be done. What we need is also to address the shortcomings in our corrupt activities fighting sector, and to increase the budgets, but to also think of really the independence of these crime-fighting bodies and the whole system of corruption investigations that are currently incoherent and underfunded. And just the asbestos case of Ace Magashule is an example of how long justice takes to really take place. That case has been in the court for almost a decade, and yet there's still no progress. We need to have consequences, and I want to echo what other members have said, that legislation is one thing and it's good, but to have enforcement and actual practical consequences for corrupt activities, that is what is needed. And currently, we are not having that. Criminals and those that are guilty of corruption are still roaming free, and the people are suffering because of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Action SA.
Honourable Speaker, honourable members, I rise to close this debate with gratitude, with disappointment.
Honourable James, it's not yet your opportunity to close. It's now the opportunity of Action SA to contribute to the debate. There's still a speaker, other parties to make contributions.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to address those who supported and who rejected.
Okay.
First, my gratitude to the parties and the members who supported this bill. I say thank you. You did not support me. You supported a principle. You supported the people of South Africa. This bill was never about politics. It was about saying enough. Enough with looting dressed up as leadership. Enough with irregular expenditure that robs clinics of medicine and schools of feeding. Second, my disappointment to those who did not support, such as the PA. Those who do not support this bill, I listened carefully to your arguments, and I must say with respect, they hold not water. To be honest, the reason why some cannot support an anti-corruption bill is because corruption has become comfortable. It has become the business model for some parties, and this bill threatens that business model. And finally, my resolve. If this bill does not pass, we will bring it back again and again, because the people did not send us here to be comfortable. They sent us here to be accountable. So I thank this House, and I thank the parties who chose the country over a party and who chose and those who chose otherwise. The people are watching and they will remember. I thank you.
Thank you. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, I greet you all in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The ACDP has taken note of this draft bill and commends Ms. James for the initiative. Fighting corruption in South Africa is vital because it loots public money, hinders the provision of basic services and infrastructure, and prevents economic growth. By stopping corruption, we can protect jobs, build better schools and hospitals, and ensure a better future for everyone in the country. Regrettably, however, corruption has reached staggering levels in society, where criminality has even infiltrated to the highest levels of our criminal justice system. It is crucial then to apply effective existing laws far more effectively and to amend laws where there are perceived gaps, as this bill seeks to do. The ACDP supports the proposed mandatory minimum sentences in the bill. Stiffer minimum sentences can be a useful deterrent to corrupt practices and have been found to be constitutional by our courts. We also support tougher proposed sanctions for hiding corrupt blacklisted status. The sad reality, however, is that out of 500 referrals made by anti-corruption bodies like the SIU, hundreds of companies still receive state tenders because they have not been blacklisted. So whilst doubling the fines and jail sentences may help, the issue is why aren't these companies being blacklisted in the first place? As far as the reduction of mandatory reporting threshold for corruption is concerned, the question is similar: how effective will it be? How many people have been prosecuted for non-compliance with the existing Section 34, where the threshold is 100,000? Very few, if any, to our knowledge. The amendment commendably does, however, seek to address the possible loophole where similar but repeated offences below the threshold may go unpunished. If then one is to increase the sentences for not blowing the whistle, then those that do blow the whistle must be far more effectively protected, particularly given the victimization and even assassination of whistleblowers like Babita Deokaran. The new protected disclosure bill goes some way improving that protection. In addition, harsher sentences for victimizing and harming whistleblowers should be introduced, and financial incentives. Lastly, the ACDP welcomes this initiative to strengthen the fight against corruption and looks forward to engaging with this bill in the Justice Portfolio Committee. It's time for the looters to be looted and the plunderers to be plundered. It's time for justice and righteousness in the country. I thank you.
Thank you. The UDM. If not, Rise Mzansi.
Nakenza Mthomoshitulu, let me also thank Honorable James for this important amendment. From ourselves as Rise Mzansi, we are friends to those that fight corruption. Any efforts that are made to fight this cancer of stealing, and sometimes we use the concept of corruption and we don't call it for what it is, because it is stealing from the public. Actually, I feel, Honorable James, that the amendments are not going far enough. And I hear those that says, no, the mandatory sentences, you know, what we have argued as Rise Mzansi, we have said that those, especially the state employees that are caught stealing from the public purse, they should not have their pension. You must withhold their pension. You can't steal from the people, and then the only punishment that you get is that you are fired, and then you walk away with your pension. That's number one. Those that are employees of the state, political leaders, ministers, premiers, mayors, they should not have their pension. The second one, which this bill must go far enough, Honorable James, and those that are in the justice portfolio, is that the people that are convicted of stealing from the public, that which we call corruption, when they are in prison, they must wear a different kind of uniform. They must wear a lime green uniform so that everyone that goes in there, they must be able to point out that these people in lime green are the ones that have stolen from the people of South Africa. And on weekends, in their lime green uniform, they must be on the streets, cleaning the streets of South Africa, because they have stolen from the people of South Africa. That is what will help us deal with corruption in this country. So we accept the amendments that you have put forward, Honorable James, but we are saying, as Rise Mzansi, it's not going far enough, because we need to be able to see, when we visit these correctional facilities, those that have stolen from the people, they must be differentiated with the kind of uniform that and the overalls that they are wearing there. It must be lime green. It must be different from the other ones, so that we can see these are the people that have stolen from the people of South Africa. These criminals, they are convicted of stealing from the people of South Africa. But we support all the efforts that are made to combat and arrest those that have made it their life mission to steal from the people of South Africa.
Thank you. Bosa? If not, the ATM? Al-Jamaa? The NCC? The PIC? The UAT? A Good Party? If not, the DA.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The Democratic Alliance certainly supports the underlying object of this bill. Corruption must carry real and serious consequences, and this bill must certainly come from a good intention. Corruption plagues our society, and citizens are the ultimate victims. It threatens the very foundations of our constitutional democracy. It should make us very angry. But Parliament should not support legislation simply because its title sounds tough. The bill proposes increased minimum sentences, raises penalties, and lowers the reporting threshold for certain offences. This will have the effect of flooding an already struggling criminal justice system. This bill is not as targeted as Action SA suggests. The provision for mandatory minimum sentencing does not establish a framework based on the amount of money involved. Instead, it applies minimum sentences to a list of offences in the Act, regardless of monetary value. The law should distinguish between sophisticated corruption and offences involving much smaller amounts. Justice requires proportionality. We already have minimum sentences for serious corruption, but if people are not being convicted in the first place, increasing sentences does not solve the problem. Investigations take too long, politically connected individuals evade prosecution, evidence is lost, witnesses are not protected, and we lack investigative and prosecutorial capacity. South Africa needs consistent enforcement. The DA has long argued for a permanent, specialised and genuinely independent anti-corruption commission with the capacity to pursue connected corrupt individuals. This is the reform South Africa needs. Sentencing policy alone does not constitute an anti-corruption strategy. Corruption flourishes because people believe they will not be caught. The greatest deterrent is the certainty of detection, prosecution, and conviction. The DA proposes a specialised anti-corruption commission and that the NPA have budgetary independence. This will provide the skills and resources required to prosecute complex corruption cases. We should not pass laws for political theatre. We must pass laws that work. South Africa cannot legislate its way out of corruption through harsher sentences alone. We need prevention, detection, investigation, prosecution, conviction, asset recovery, and consequences. We need procurement systems that can't be abused, competent officials, and protection of whistleblowers. When corruption is proven, we need to implement existing serious consequences. Honourable House Chair, the DA cannot support legislation because it looks tough on crime. Our laws must be enforceable and effective. The DA's message is simple. The DA does not want corruption to become more severely punished only on paper. Action XA wants to look tough on corruption. The DA actually wants to fight it. We need an independent anti-corruption commission that will restore public trust, protect taxpayers, and build a South Africa that is governed in the interests of all its people, rather than the politically connected few. I thank you.
Thank you. The ANC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The African National Congress welcomed the opportunity to participate in the first reading debate on the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Amendment Bill introduced by Honorable James. Corruption remains one of the most serious threats to our democracy and our developmental agenda. It diverts public resources away from the people and undermines the confidence in the state and its institutions. The ANC therefore supports firm and consistent actions against corruption. The bill proposes two key amendments to the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities. It seeks to introduce mandatory minimum sentences for certain corrupt offenses, ranging from 5 years in magistrate courts to 18 years in High Court, with the possibility of life imprisonment. It also proposing reducing the threshold for mandatory reporting of certain offenses from 100 to 30,000. We recognize the intention behind these proposals. Those who abuse public office or entrusted resources for personal gains must face meaningful consequences, and suspected corruption must be reported and acted upon. However, Honorable Chairperson, this proposal requires careful consideration. Mandatory minimum sentences must be assessed against our constitutional framework, particularly the principle of proportionality and judicial discretion. We must ensure that the punishment fits the offenses and that legislation is strengthened rather complicates our criminal justice system. The proposed reduction in the reporting threshold also requires consideration of capacity. Lowering the threshold may significantly increase the number of matters reported to law enforcement agencies, including the Hawks. We must therefore ensure that the institution responsible for receiving, investigating, and prosecuting these matters have the resources and capacity to respond effectively. The fight against corruption cannot depend on the tougher sentence alone. It requires prevention, effective investigation, successful prosecution, asset recovery, and consequence management. It also requires strong institutions that are able to act independently without fear and favor. The lessons arising from the state capture demonstrate the consequences of weak institutions and inadequate accountability. We must ensure that legislative framework addresses these weaknesses and strengthens the integrity of the state. The ANC will therefore engage constructively with this bill as it proceeds through Parliament. We will consider the proposal against the Constitution, existing legislation, institutional capacity, and the practical reality of implementation. Our objective must be clear: to prevent corruption, ensure that it's properly investigated and prosecuted, ensure that those found guilty face appropriate consequences. The ANC supports the strengthening of anti-corruption framework, and we look forward to meaningful public participation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable James. This is now your actual opportunity to reply to the debate. You have in part already done so, but I will afford you another opportunity to reply to those who have come after your previous intervention.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Honourable Speaker, let me close now by thanking those members and parties who have supported this bill today. The EFF, the IFP, the Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP, Rise Mzansi, the DA, the ENC. Your support shows that despite our political differences, there is common ground when it comes to confronting corruption. I also want to address those who have not supported this bill. The PA has rejected it. And frankly, their arguments demonstrates that they have not properly read this legislation. The bill does not blindly impose punishment without discretion. It expressively provides for judicial discretion where there are extenuating circumstances, with judges required to place those circumstances on record. So let us be honest about what is being argued here. Are we really saying that corruption should be excused based on the amount that is too small? Those that did not even appear, shame on you. UDM, BOSA, ATM, Al-Jamar, NCC, good. This is not how you change a culture of corruption. Corruption is corruption. If we continue creating excuses and loopholes for it, we should not be surprised when it comes normalized. To the honourable members from the DA and the ANC, this bill forms part of Action SA's broader holistic anti-corruption reform package. We have brought forward this package because there is no single silver bullet for corruption. We need stronger laws, greater transparency, tougher consequences, and institutions capable of enforcing them. We are clear-eyed about what is needed. To those who supported this bill again, we thank you. To those who rejected it, we will continue to hold you accountable for that decision. And it is on record today for all South Africans to see. And to the House, let us not allow this bill to disappear into parliamentary machinery. We know that private members' bills, we know how private members' bills are treated. Action SA is ready to work constructively in a committee with every party that wants to strengthen this legislation and get it passed. I therefore call on the House to move the Zero Tolerance Corruption Bill forward swiftly. South Africans have waited long enough for political parties to stop talking about corruption and start doing something about it. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes this first reading debate on this bill, and you are reminded that no decision on the bill is taken at this point in time, but the bill is regarded as having been read a first time. We now move on to the second item on the order paper, which is the consideration of a report of the Portfolio Committee on Police on the performance of the Office of Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations Judge for the 2024-2025 financial year. The Honourable Cameron to introduce the report. Is the Honourable Cameron on the platform to introduce this report? If not, is there another member of the Police Portfolio Committee who have been tasked to do so? Am I still audible?
You are
Yes, you
audible.
are.
Yes, Mr. J, you are audible.
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, look, we can't deal with a report that has not been once more before we move on to the next item on the order paper. The Honourable Cameron. If not, then we move on to the third order, or we at least attempt to, which is the consideration of a report of the Portfolio Committee on Police, once again, the performance of private security industry. So it would seem we will have the same problem.
Honorable Cameron Chair, usayolungisa le ndaba ye-4 billion le ngathi lo mfana
No, honourable member. Honourable members, let's remain disciplined. I think what we in the circumstances will do is let's take a 5-minute comfort break, and if the table staff then can maybe assist us to inquire as to whether the Honourable Cameron or another member of the Police Portfolio Committee will introduce the report. So let's reconvene within 5 minutes.
You are unfair. You are unfair. Actually, you were supposed to pass. They are not ready.
No,
honourable
members.
We were going to be told that you have passed. If it was other political parties, it happened to us before. You can't do that.
You can't do
Why
that.
must we stop now and wait because the DA is not here?
They are not ready.
Honourable Chairperson, it's Honourable Schikkerling.
Yes, Honourable Schikkerling.
I am online, Chair, to present the bill, the report. I am here. Honourable Cameron just had a emergency that he had to deal with urgently.
And they must never happen again, these things that you are doing.
No, that indeed it is.
Never happen.
Order.
We must be treated the same as members of this parliament.
Order, honourable members.
There's no favourables here.
Yes, no, you're quite correct.
So now, because your member is back, says he wants to introduce the report, you are no longer breaking for 5 minutes. You are unfair.
Yeah, no, thank you, Honorable Member. I see the hand of the Honorable Breitenbach. Honorable Breitenbach, why do you want to be recognized?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to apologize for Honorable Cameron. He was dealing with a very serious issue that arose very urgently. It's unfortunately a suicide, and he will be on the platform within the next 3 minutes. He offers his sincerest apologies, as do I.
We all have issues, but we organize ourselves as different political parties.
Thank you.
We are
Thank
also
you.
on the ground doing the work. We are dealing with issues similar as those ones. It is not for the first time that we hear things like that. People on the ground are suffering.
Thank you,
And
honorable
we are also
members.
dealing with that, but we organize ourselves properly so that when I'm busy, someone takes over.
Yeah, no, thank you. Honorable
Chair,
Schikkerling, do you want to proceed as a member of the Police Portfolio Committee to introduce the report on the investigations judge?
Chairperson, if we may just give that 5-minute comfort break.
No, as it is, members feel that that's unfair to do so.
That's fine, then I will proceed then.
Yeah, please do so.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. Sorry for the delay. Honourable House Chair, on behalf of the committee, we support the report of the Portfolio Committee on Police on the performance of the Office of the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation Judge for 2024-2025 financial year. This report recognizes the critical role played by the Office of the DPCI Judge in providing independent oversight of the Hawks. If the DPCI is expected to investigate serious and organized crime and corruption, then those who exercise those powers must themselves be subjected to credible oversight. The report records that the office dealt with 163 complaints and case matters during the year under review. Of the 49 matters finalized within its mandate, only 19 resulted in adverse findings against the DPCI and its members, which is incredibly concerning. These complaints included allegations of improper investigations, undue delays, failure to provide feedback, abuse of power, interference in investigations, unlawful arrest, search and seizure, intimidation, and violations of privacy. This means that almost 4 out of the 10 matters finalized, the office found wrongdoings. These are serious allegations. They go directly to the integrity of policing, the protection of constitutional rights, and the public's trust in law enforcement. Of particular concern to the committee chair is the allegations of interference in investigations. The committee was advised that these related to interference within the DPCI, including by supervisors. Chairperson, this raises a fundamental question. How can the Hawks effectively investigate corruption and organized crime if investigators themselves are subject to interference from within the organization? If investigators can be pressured, obstructed, or influenced by their own superiors, then we have a huge integrity problem and the investigations are placed in question. This really looks like a serious threat to the integrity of the investigations. Another concern is the capacity of the DPCI judge. And the office has only 12 funded posts and just 2 investigators nationally. This is wholly inadequate for the institution expected to investigate complaints against a specified crime-fighting organization operating across the country. We cannot demand effective oversight while providing an oversight institution with the resources to do little more than keep its head above water. We therefore support the committee's recommendations, Chair. The committee is more than happy with what's going on. However, the capacity is only one problem. The report highlights the recommendations of the DPCI judge that are not legally binding. This is a significant weakness. An oversight institution must be able to ensure that its findings result in meaningful corrective action. An adverse finding cannot simply become another entry in an annual report. Where misconduct is established, there must be consequence management. Parliament must therefore be able to follow the entire process from complaint to investigation, to finding, to disciplinary action, and where appropriate, criminal proceedings. While the committee supports legislative amendments to strengthen the powers of the Office of the DPCI and improve accountability for the implementation of its recommendations, if the DPCI judge finds wrongdoing, there must be a clear obligation to act not as an option, and we cannot ignore the findings. We also welcome the efforts to increase public awareness of the complaints mechanism. Oversight is only effective when members of the public know where to complain and trust that their complaints will be handled independently. Honourable House Chair, the fight against corruption requires strong institutions, but strong institutions must also be accountable institutions and act above the law. The Hawks must be fearless in investigating corruption and organised crime, but no member of this committee or of the Hawks should be above scrutiny. So we support the report as the committee, and we want to say that oversight without consequence is not accountability. Adverse findings must lead to action, misconduct must have consequences, and Parliament must continue to hold the Minister, SAPS, and the DPCI accountable for this implementation. Thank you, Chair. I therefore propose the report to Parliament. Thank you.
I will now recognize the Honourable Shangwe.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Chair, Umkhonto weSizwe Party rejects this report. We reject it because Parliament created the second mechanism of the office of the DPCI judge, precisely because IPIT general oversight of SAPS was not enough to police the Hawks. Yet this report shows that even dedicated mechanisms remain under-resourced and toothless, leaving the same question unanswered. Who holds the Hawks accountable when they are accused of abuse, intimidation, unlawful arrest, and interference in investigations? The report tells us that the office dealt with 163 complaints and case matters. Of the 49 matters within its mandate that were finalized, 19 resulted in adverse findings against DPCI or its members. That is a 39% adverse finding rate. That is not a minor inconvenience. That's a pattern of inside of a body. Sorry, that's a pattern of abuse inside a body entrusted with investigating serious crime and corruption. The complaint included alleged abuse of power, interference in investigation, unlawful arrest, unlawful searches and seizures, threats, intimidation, and privacy violation. Yet the committee answer is essentially, give the office more capacity to conduct more awareness campaigns, consider legislative and amendments. No, Chair, not enough. We cannot keep producing reports which identify wrongdoing and response with recommendation dressed up as a future intentions. The report itself admits the office has only 2 investigators nationally to police a body accused of wrongful doing in over a third of its finalized cases. That is a fig leaf. Even more disturbing, the recommendation of the DPCI judge are not legally binding. An oversight mechanism whose finding can be ignored by its institute. By its own institute. It's not oversight at all. The Parliament cannot congratulate itself for documenting a problem while refusing to confront the architecture that allows it to continue. The problem records a 31-year-month vacancy before the appointment of the current DPCI judge. It records institutional weakness, adverse finding, complaints, interference, and the absence of binding enforcement mechanism. Yet the committee concludes expressions of appreciation and recommendations to expedite, consider, continue, and strengthen. That is precisely a half-hearted approach that the MKP rejects. We need enforced accountability. We need adequate investigative capacity matched to the Hawks' national footprint. We need binding mechanism ensuring adverse findings carry real consequences. We need clear timelines for disciplinary and criminal actions where wrongdoing is established. And we need Parliament to stop treating oversight as a paperwork exercise. The people of South Africa do not need another report telling them The corruption is serious. They need institutions that act. For this reason, MKP rejects this report. We will not lend our vote for a report that documents serious weakness in fighting against corruption, yet offers no advice remedy. Angazi Chair noma bosuzwile ngensizwa ye-40 billion le DA. Kodwa sobuye sixoxe. I submit.
The Honorable Khoza.
Chairperson, the EFF rejects this performance report for a Directorate of Priority Crimes investigation. The Hawks, together with the South African Police Service in general, are a monument of the failure of the democratic state to develop sufficient capacity to fight crimes and keep our communities safe. In the Cape Flats, right where Parliament is, we have an average of 50 murders every weekend. This has been going for years, and if we had a functioning Directorate for Priority Crimes, we should have long detected the root causes of this violence and eliminated them. The entire country has become a haven of extortion gangs. These people are terrorizing communities and have effectively created a parallel state ruled by a barrel of a gun. The Hawks are silent on this sort of crimes too, leaving old women who depend on informal market at the mercy of thugs. We cannot ask ordinary South Africans to trust the Hawks while complaints of wrongdoing inside the institution remain unresolved and consequences remain unclear. The capacity of the DPCI judge's office is also incompletely adequate, with only 2 investigators nationally dealing with a growing and complex caseload. You cannot fight corruption with a weak institution, empty offices, and insufficient investigators. That is how criminals and corrupt officials escape accountability. We are particularly concerned that the recommendations of the DPCI judge are not legally binding, which weaken the entire oversight mechanism. The EFF therefore demands stronger legislation so that findings and recommendations cannot simply be ignored by those investigated. While we welcome the recommendation for additional investigators and support personnel, we cannot forever endorse recommendations while there is no capacity to implement those very same recommendations. We further welcome stronger reporting requirements on complaints, adverse findings, referrals, and where recommendations are actually implemented, while supporting the move towards strengthening the DPCI judge's office, its investigative capacity, legislative powers, and oversight of the Hawks. We cannot, with a clear conscience, support this report. Chair, the EFF rejects this report with its entirety because it doesn't represent the concerns on the ground. And Chair, the House must note that this is the kind of attitude that we experience from the chairperson of the police. He's absent, he's not here, there is no clear signs of responsibility for someone who happened to lead the portfolio committee on police. This is embarrassing, and that's the kind of attitude that we experience here in the Western Cape, in particular in the Cape Flats. Our people are being left with no government. From the municipality, from the mayor, the provincial leadership, our people are on their own.
Your time has now
political, and that's the
time has
attitude
now
of the
expired,
to black
Honourable
communities.
Member.
We reject this report.
Thank you. The Honourable Ngubezi.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to honourable members on the virtual platforms. The Inkatha Freedom Party recognizes the role of the Office of the DPCI Judge in promoting accountability, transparency, and public confidence in the work of the Hawks. The findings of this report raise concerns regarding limited institutional and investigative capacity, the increasing complexity of complaints, and the need for stronger follow-through on recommendation and referrals. We note with concern the effective oversight requires more than identifying wrongdoing. The office must have the capacity to investigate the complaints effectively and recommendations and referrals must lead to meaningful action and accountability without delays. The IFP supports the efforts to strengthen the powers and the capacity of the office, addressing vacancies timelessly, and spend awareness of the complaints mechanisms. Public resources allocated to oversight institutions must support capable administration, effective investigation, and public confidence. The IFP therefore supports this report and reaffirms its importance of strengthening oversight, accountability, and integrity within the DPCI. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the PA?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, honorable members. The Patriotic Alliance rise today to affirm a simple principle. South Africans deserve a police service that is honest, accountable, and fully committed to justice. That is why the performance of the Office of the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation Judge is so important. Oversight of the Hawks is not symbolic. It is essential to protecting the public from abuse of power and ensuring that high priority crime investigations are conducted lawfully. The committee's 2024-2025 report makes one thing clear. The judge office is doing its work, but it's doing so under severe strain. Complaints continue to rise, backlogs remain stubborn, and investigative capacity is far below what is required. Oversight cannot succeed when the institution responsible for it is under-resourced and overstretched. The Patriotic Alliance support the report because it confronts these realities directly. It calls for stronger cooperation from SAPS and the Hawks, improve case tracking systems, and increase staffing for the judge's office. These are not optional improvements, they are constitutional obligations. If we expect the Hawks to fight corruption, organized crime, and state capture networks, then Parliament must ensure that the oversight body has the tools to hold them accountable. We also note the troubling pattern of selective participation in committee processes. When members abstain on matters of justice and public trust, they weaken the very institutions meant to protect our people. The Patriotic Alliance rejects that behavior. We do not run from accountability. We stand in it. Honorable Speaker, our communities are tired of excuses. They want a police service that works, an oversight system that acts, and a parliament that puts the people first. The Patriotic Alliance stands with those communities in every sitting, in every committee, and in every decision. We support the report and call for the urgent implementation of its recommendations. Oversight must be strengthened, cooperation enforced, and justice restored. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Is there a representative of the FF Plus? If not, the Honorable James.
Honorable Chairperson, South Africans expect the Hawks to investigate corruption, organized crime, and the most serious threats to our country. But we cannot demand accountability from criminals while failing to demand accountability within the institution tasked with fighting them. The report before us makes this clear. During 2024-25, the Office of the DPCI Judge managed 163 complaints and cases. Of the 49 matters within its mandate that were finalized, 19 resulted in adverse findings against DPCI members. Complaints included abuse of power, interference of investigations, unlawful arrest and searches, intimidation, and unacceptable delays. These are not administrative inconveniences. These are allegations that strike at the heart of public trust in our criminal justice system. And yet the office itself has only 2 investigators nationally, 50 within. Mandate matters remain under investigation at year end. This is simply not good enough. Even more concerning is that the recommendations of the DPCI judge are not legally binding. What good is an adverse finding if there's no guarantee that action follows? Government must strengthen this office, appoint additional investigators, and give the judge meaningful enforcement powers. We must also demand answers on what consequences followed those 19 adverse findings. Accountability cannot be optional. It cannot depend on who is being investigated, and no member of the Hawks should ever be above the law. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Meshwe.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ACDP will not support this report for a number of reasons. The first one is the concern that is raised by the fact that the recommendations from the DPCI judge are not binding. And so if they're not binding, obviously, there will be no capacity to enforce the powers and ensure that the recommendations are adhered to. And secondly, while we all know that crime in South Africa is too high and South Africans are crying and unsafe in their homes and in their streets and communities, the Hawks also do not have a clean record. So far, there are people that have complaints against the Hawks that have failed to investigate serious crimes. So the ACDP believes that the office of the DPCI judge has to be strengthened, has to be given more power so that people can know that whatever recommendations are made, they will be applied, they will be implemented so that South Africa can be made a safer place. We believe South Africa deserves an efficient, effective police service, and this will not happen if those that should be ensuring that their recommendations are taken seriously and it's not happening. So the ACDP is not going to support this recommendation. Thank you, Chairperson, and report.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the UDM? Rais Mzansi. Bosa. The ATM. Al-Jamaa. The NCC. The PIC. The UIT. The Good Party. The DA.
Good morning, Chair. Thank
Yes.
you.
Honorable Cameron, before you proceed, let me just address you. We have been informed by your chief whip that you were dealing with, let's say, an issue either in your constituency or otherwise that has arisen. But it is very important that specifically our chairpersons who are to introduce reports ensure that either they are available or another member of a portfolio committee is available to introduce the report. The way in which this unfolded has not showcased the type of efficiency we want the National Assembly to be known for. So please don't allow for a repeat of this situation to happen.
Thank you, Chair, and my profuse apology, Chair, and to the honourable members for my late arrival this morning. I want to put it on record that on my way, I was called to a scene where someone had taken their life very close to me, taken their own life, and I was just waiting for the authorities to get there with this horrific suicide scene. So I apologise for being late. That is the reason. And as you know from all of the committees that I've led before, I'm always timeless with my attendance. I want to start by recognizing that there's been progress in the office of the DPCI judge over the past year. After the position of the judge himself was vacant for quite some time, I think we have now better stability in the office. Spending has improved significantly, and 107 of the 163 cases dealt with during the year were finalized. But I think we need to ask a fundamental question, Chair, and that is the office actually having the impact that Parliament intended it to have? Because an ombud cannot simply become another place where complaints are received, processed, referred somewhere else, and eventually closed. Its value lies in what happens as a result. And as all of the honourable members said, we need to see some kind of consequence and something that's legally binding. So the nature of the complaints coming before the office should concern us. We are seeing allegations of improper investigations, unreasonable delays, failures to provide feedback, abuse of power, interference, etc. And these aren't complaints that are just simply, a mistake here or there. They go directly very often to the integrity of the Hawks. And that's why I think we need to move beyond simply asking how many cases were opened and closed and processed, but actually need to go look at what happened then. We need to ask the question, then what? What happened to the 19 findings that were made? Those resulted adverse findings, and who was held accountable? What was the result of it? What action was taken? And does the DPCI judge actually know what happened after making the findings? And we need proper tracking systems for this, something I think the broader Civilian Secretariat is also pushing for. And every adverse finding or referral should remain visible until there is an outcome. The same applies to the 56 cases carried forward into the current financial year. We need timelines, and we need to know how old those cases are, why they remain unresolved, and when and how they will be completed. Then, Chair, it's critical for us, as with many other departments, that we need a simple type of dashboard that can tell the committee what cases received look like, cases finalized, the age and outstanding cases, adverse findings, etc. And that would allow us to better measure the impact rather than just activity. There's also a bigger structural issue that I think Parliament needs to confront. The DPCI judge exists specifically to provide independent oversight where there are allegations of abuse of power by Hawks members or interference with Hawks investigations, yet the office remains financially and administratively located under the Civilian Secretariat of Police. And we should ask whether this arrangement actually gives them the necessary operational independence. We should also ask, at present, the mechanism is largely complaint-driven, and we should then say, is the DPCI, should the judge just simply sit and wait for complaints? We should seriously consider whether there needs to be reviews that allow the judge, in defined circumstances and with appropriate safeguards, to initiate and investigate on his own accord. That is already one of the questions identified for consideration in previous annual report analysis. We also need much better coordination between this office, IPID, Civilian Secretariat, and other oversight structures. And finally, we need to look at protection of complainants. I cannot stress this enough. So my view is fairly straightforward. Office has stabilized and there has been progress, but now we must go and measure impact. I thank you.
I'm fine, thank you. Looks like I
Thank
made
you.
it.
Before we proceed, Honorable Meshwe, you have not been muted. Thank you. Please remain muted until recognized to speak. The Honorable Mohela.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
I think it's a mistake. It's Honorable Mokoena.
Please proceed, Honorable Mokoena.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the fight against serious and organized crimes requires capable law enforcement institutions supported by effective system of accountability that strengthen public confidence. It is within this great context that the ANC supports the report of the Portfolio Committee on Police on the performance of the Office of the DPCI Judge for 2024-2025 financial year. The office provides an important complaints mechanism concerning the exercise of powers by members of the DPCI. Its work contributes to ensuring that the Hawks can fulfill their mandate while maintaining professionalism, accountability, and respect for the law. Honorable Chairperson, during the reporting period, the office managed 163 complaints and case matters comprising 125 matters carried forward from the previous financial year and 38 new complaints. Of the 107 matters finalized, 49 fell within its legislative mandate. Of these 90 resulted in adverse findings against DPCI members. 28 were found to be unsubstantiated and 2 were referred to relevant authorities. These figures demonstrate the value of an accessible complaints mechanism. They also highlight the importance of ensuring that matters are dealt with efficiently and that appropriate follow-up takes place where findings are made. We therefore take note of the case management system introduced to improve monitoring, and reduce delays. The report further identified recurring complaints concerning delays in investigation, inadequate feedback to complainants, alleged abuse of power, unlawful arrest and searches, intimidation, and interference in investigation. These matters warrant continued attention, while recognizing that many DPCI investigators are complex and require extensive engagement with SAPS, the NPA, and substantial case documentation. The continued improvement of case management should assist in balancing through investigation with the need for the matters to be finalized within reasonable periods. Honorable members, a key consideration arising from the report is the capacity of the office. It operated with 12 funded posts and only 2 investigators nationally, despite dealing with complaints from across the country. We therefore support the steps already taken towards a structural review and the engagement with the National Treasury regarding additional investigator posts. As public awareness of the complaints mechanism grows, it is important that the office is supported with sufficient human resource to respond effectively while maintaining the quality of its investigation. This brings us to the importance of public awareness. Following his appointment, Judge Lohodi undertook engagement with the DPCI offices across all 9 provinces. The office also reached communities and other stakeholders through radio broadcasts, community outreach, and digital platforms. These initiatives are important because an accountability mechanism can only be effective when people know about it and understand how to access it. We therefore support the continued expansion of this engagement. Honorable Chair, the financial performance of the office also reflects responsible budget utilization. Of the final appropriation of the 6.788 million, 6.603 million was spent, representing 98% expenditure and an improvement in under expenditure compared with the previous financial year. The report also records 1.089 million in irregular expenditure that remain under investigation. We know that the appropriate processes are being followed and trust that the matter will be dealt with in accordance with the relevant legislative and financial management framework. The committee also raised the importance of suitable accommodation for the office, particularly given the sensitive and confidential nature of its work. Efforts to secure appropriate accommodation are therefore important to protecting information and supporting the effective functioning of the office. Honorable members, the report also raises an important question regarding the implementation of recommendations made by the PSIRA judge. At present, these recommendations are not legally binding. We support the committee's recommendation that possible legislative amendments be considered to strengthen the effectiveness of the complaint mechanism. Such consideration should take place carefully and within our constitutional framework, with the objective of ensuring that recommendations receive proper consideration and that there is appropriate accountability regarding the implementation. Honorable Chair, the reporting requirements recommended by the committee will allow Parliament to continue monitoring progress in relation to complaints, adverse finding, referrals, and the implementations of recommendations. This is important because effective oversight is not only about identifying challenges, it is also about supporting institutions to improve their performance and fulfill their mandates. The Office of the DPCI forms an important part of the broader criminal justice system. As we strengthen the host capacity to combat organized crime, corruption, and serious economic offenses, we must also ensure that accountability mechanism remains accessible, effective, and properly resourced. The ANC therefore support the committee's recommendation to strengthen the capacity of the office, expand public awareness, improve the implementation of recommendation, ensure that vacancies are addressed timeously. These measures will contribute to a stronger complaints mechanism and greater public confidence in the work of the DPCI. The ANC support the report. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes this debate. You are reminded that the decision on the report will only be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. We now move on to the last item on the order paper, which is the consideration of a report of the Portfolio Committee on Police on the performance of the private security industry regulatory authority for the 2024-2025 financial year. To introduce the report, the Honourable Cameron.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, the private security industry regulatory authority plays an increasingly important role in South Africa's safety and security environment, and the committee acknowledges that the regulatory authority achieved all of its annual performance targets and conducted, as they reported, 43,000 security officer inspections. Its enforcement activities resulted in over 1,000 arrests, close to 250 finalized prosecutions, and confiscation of over 850 firearms. And these operational achievements, as with the previous report, must be considered alongside other challenges that are faced. Now, in PSIRA's case, there are serious governance and financial concerns. PSIRA again received a qualified audit opinion, while the material irregularity arising from the UIF-funded training project remains unresolved. The committee is particularly concerned about the advance payments made before services were delivered, the recovery of public funds, and the absence of timely consequence management. The prolonged absence of a properly constituted PSIRA council has further weakened governance and accountability. The police committee has therefore called for urgent appointment of the council, stronger internal audit and financial controls, and improved contract management and consistent action against officials responsible for misconduct or financial losses. High performance against predetermined targets is important, but it cannot compensate for weak governance. Operational performance, financial accountability, and consequence management must advance together. The committee will closely monitor the audit recovery plan, the UIF-funded project, the 52 million rand legal claim, disciplinary proceedings, and the recovery of any losses. On behalf of the Police Committee, I thank PSIRA's management and officials, as well as the members of staff of the committee, for their work in this regard. Honourable Chairperson, I recommend or commend the report to the House for adoption. Thank you, Chair.
The Honourable Shongwe.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Chair, Umkhonto weSizwe Party rejects this report. We reject it because the report is a case study in how the establishment wants Parliament to normalize failure, document the failure, express concern, make recommendations, request another report, and move on. We refuse, Chair. PSIRA received a qualified audit opinion again for 2024-2025. The Auditor General identified unresolved prior period errors, weaknesses, and debtor reconciliation deficiencies in cash flow statement, procurement weaknesses, contract management failures, and weak internal control. This is a pattern, not a first offense. Then we arrive at the UIF training project. The program, worth almost 130 million, was established to train unemployed security officers. Payments were made to a service provider before the service was delivered. More than 30 million remained outstanding for services not received. The Auditor General found that PSIRA had not used its resources economically and effectively, and concluded that insufficient action had been taken on consequences management and recovery. Chairperson, this is public money. This money intended to benefit unemployed South Africans, and yet years later, we are still discussing verification, litigation, arbitration, recovery, and investigation. The forensic investigation reportedly identified possible indicators of fraud. The matter was referred to the SIU, but the investigation remained pending because presidential proclamation had not yet been issued. Meanwhile, Parliament is being asked to accept a recommendation telling PSIRA to strengthen internal controls and ensure accountability. Strengthened, ensure, right? Where is the consequence? Who approved the payment? Who benefited? Who failed to perform the due diligence? Who is being held personally liable? How much money has actually been recovered? These questions remain unanswered, Chair. And then there's governance, Chair. PSIRA Council was removed at the time of the committee's consideration. There was still no duly constituted council. The CEO was placed in the position of acting accounting authority. The report itself acknowledges this created instability. Yet the committee wants us to accept a report celebrating 100% achievement of performance targets. Chairperson, 100% of target. What is that actually? We cannot achieve 100% of a paper while failing on governance. accountability, and financial control. You cannot measure success by accounting activities while the institution cannot account for public money. You cannot confuse administrative performance with institutional integrity. The private security the private security industry is not a minor sector. It controls firearms. It employs hundreds of thousands of security officers. It operates in committees, businesses, and strategic infrastructure. PSIRA own figures records 151 firearms confiscated, 1,265 arrests, and 245 finalized prosecution. This sector demands a regulator that is clean, competent, and properly governed. Instead, this report gives us another cycle of promises. MKP will not rubber stamp that. We reject the culture of half measures. We reject reports that identify serious financial and governance failures, but do not deliver decisive consequence management. We reject the normalization of qualified audits. We reject the idea that public money disappear into contractual disputes while parliaments await. The people deserve accountability now, not after a round of meetings, litigation, and correspondence. For these reasons, Umkhonto we Party rejects this report. We call for the recovery of the rent.
Your time has now expired.
Decisive action against official funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
40 billion.
Honorable Koza.
Chairperson, the AFF rises to fight a system that has allowed failures, corruption, and weak accountability to become normal in the regulation of the private security industry. PSIRA cannot continue hiding behind statistics while serious governance failures, qualified audit, and weak consequence management persist year after year. An institution regulating one of the largest security industries in South Africa must be clean, competent, stable, and accountable to the people. The continued absence of a properly constituted PSIRA Council is unacceptable and undermines effective governance, oversight, and accountability. The recurring qualified audit findings demonstrate that previous warnings have not produced sufficient corrective actions. Public money is not the property of officials. Every rand lost through negligence, corruption, and maladministration belongs to the people. The UIF training project raises serious concerns, Chair, particularly where substantial payments were made before services were properly delivered. Where wrongdoings is established, those responsible must face real consequences, including recovery of public funds and criminal accountability where appropriate. The EFF rejects the culture where officials fail, institutions investigate themselves, and nobody ultimately takes responsibility. We therefore demand that the recommendation on internal audit, financial controls, procurement, and consequence management become measurable actions, not another report gathering dust. We acknowledge serious enforcement reports, including more than 43,000 inspections, 851 firearms confiscated, and 1,265 arrests. But enforcement statistics mean little if the private security industry remains vulnerable to criminality, exploitation, illegal firearms, and weak regulation. The PSIRA must work decisively with the South African Police Service to establish or ensure that firearms in the hands of private security personnel and individuals, more especially in KZN, as a concern and Gauteng, are properly controlled and never become instrument of violence or organized crime. The EFF further demand that security workers are treated with dignity, paid fairly, and protected from exploitation by companies that profit from their labor. We will continue to expose corruption, demand transparency, and hold PSIRA accountable because South Africa cannot afford a security industry that is powerful enough to protect the rich but unaccountable to the poor. We support the report, Chair, because our support is not just a blank check. It is a demand for a stronger, cleaner and more accountable PSIRA that serve the people of South Africa, and we shall continue scrutinizing and holding them accountable. And we forever say the security guards belong to the EFF, and the security guards deserve better treatment and fair wages in their workplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Ngobese.
A good day, Chairperson, and good day to all the members on virtual platforms. The IFP acknowledges the committee's report and notes the importance of regulatory authorities, especially concerning the security industry. We wish to acknowledge PSIRA's improved financial performance and congratulate the authority on achieving its performance targets. However, Honorable Chair, it will be remiss not to mention our concerns. These include poor governance, financial mismanagement, and inadequate accountability. In particular, the unresolved UIF training project and associated financial irregularities raised serious concerns regarding accountability and protection of funds. This ties into the notion of integrity, a value that the IFP has constantly held dear. We therefore call for a stronger governance measures, including improved auditing system, disciplinary processes, and greater financial accountability. It is perhaps an apt reminder that public trust be earned through institutional integrity. The IFP support the report and calls for the recommendation contained herein to be implemented steadfastly. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the PA?
Thanks again, Honorable Speaker, honorable members again. The Patriotic Alliance rise today to reaffirm our commitment to clean governance, strong oversight, and the protection of South Africans who rely on the state to regulate powerful industries fairly and effectively. We have considered the performance of the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority for the 2024-25 financial year, and the findings are deeply concerning. The committee's report makes it clear that PSIRA entered the year in a state of instability. The dissolution of its council left the entity with a legally constituted accounting authority. Without a legally constituted accounting authority, weakening financial oversight and undermining compliance with the PFMA. This is not a small administrative issue. It is a fundamental governance failure. The private security industry is one of the largest and most influential sectors in our country. Millions of South Africans depend on it for safety, and thousands of workers depend on it for their livelihoods. A regulator in distress puts all of them at risk. The Patriotic Alliance cannot accept a situation where such a critical institution operates without proper leadership, without stable governance, and without an internal controls required to protect the public's interest. We acknowledge that PSIRA continues its regulatory work despite these challenges, but recurring auditing findings, missed performance targets, and weakening institution capacity shows that the entity is struggling. Oversight cannot be effective when the regulator itself is unstable. Honorable Speaker, our communities deserve regulators that works, institutions that are accountable, and leadership that does not collapse under pressure. The Patriotic Alliance stands firmly for restoring stability, enforcing accountability, and ensuring that every entity entrusted with public responsibility meets the highest standards of governance. We support the report and call for swift implementation of its recommendations. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The FF Plus. If not, the Honorable James.
Honorable Chairperson, South Africa has reached a point where people are paying twice for their safety. They pay the state through their taxes, and then they pay private security companies because they no longer trust the state to protect them. That is the uncomfortable reality we must confront. Private security guards are increasingly filling the gaps left by a failing SAPS. They protect our homes, businesses, schools, hospitals, and communities because ordinary South Africans cannot afford to wait for a police vehicle that may never arrive. But Honourable Chairperson, this is not how a functioning state should operate. Private security is not supposed to replace the South African police service. Yes, as SAP's capacity deteriorates, communities are increasingly forced to rely on private security to provide the safety government promised them. That makes PSIRA's role even more important. The regulator must ensure that this growing industry is professional, accountable, and properly controlled. The report shows that PSIRA conducted more than 43,000 security officer inspections, confiscated 851 firearms, and contributed to 1,265 arrests. But the regulator itself received a qualified audit opinion with recurring governance, procurement, and internal control failures. We cannot have a failed state relying on a poorly governed regulator to oversee the people filling its security vacuum. Fix SAPS, strengthen PSIRA, and restore the state's responsibility to keep South Africans safe. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Meshwe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. In the Police Committee's report on the performance of the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority for 2024 and 2025, the committee raised concerns over weak oversight and the need for stronger compliance in the private security sector. In recent months, two serious matters have come to light. Firstly, the PSIRA has launched an investigation into a disturbing incident in which 6 security officers in Durban were caught on film assaulting a homeless man. Secondly, President Ramaphosa has authorized a probe by the Special Investigating Unit into the alleged maladministration of the PSIRA's training contracts. Despite millions of public funds spent, just 118 learners out of 6,500 have reportedly been accredited. When funds for training are misused, our economy suffers and learners are disadvantaged because resources meant to build skills and jobs are being wasted. And this obviously is a great concern to the ACDP. Chairperson, the ACDP further notes that 851 firearms have been confiscated and stored in collaboration with the SAPS. Given recent reports this week that some 2,500 SAPS firearms were reportedly stolen or lost over the last 4 years, would urge caution and far stricter protocols and oversight on how firearms, whether confiscated or issued to police officers, are securely stored.
Thank you, Honourable Meshwe. Your time has now expired. Is there a speaker on behalf of the UDM? Rais Mzansi? Bosa? The ATM? Al Jamal? The NCC? The PIC? The UAT? The Good Party? If not, I recognize the Honourable Schikkerling.
Thank you, House Chair. I rise on behalf of the Democratic Alliance to participate in the consideration of the Portfolio Committee on Police's report on the performance of PSIRA for the 2025 financial year. This committee report states that PSIRA achieved 100% of its annual performance plan targets, and that really sounds impressive. But Honourable House Chair, 100% of wrong things is still a failure, because the same report before us contains serious concerns about governance, financial management, consequence management, and the use of public funds. PSIRA conducted more than 9,000 business inspections and more than 43,000 security officer inspections, but inspections are activities and effective regulation is the outcome. And when we look at the outcome, we have serious reason to be concerned. PSIRA received another qualified audit opinion for the 24-25 year with weaknesses in financial management and internal controls. Then there is the UIF-funded training program with almost 130 million rand. The program was intended to train 7,071 unemployed learners, something we desperately need in our country. Yet, of the 6,507 learners who completed the program, only 118 received recognized accreditation. Let that sink in. Thousands of unemployed South Africans were promised skills and opportunities. Almost 130 million rand was spent, and only 118 people received recognized accreditation. More than 30 million was paid to the service provider before services were even rendered. So we must ask, House Chair, what is the value of achieving 100% of your target if 130 million program fails to deliver the outcomes it promised? The committee also raised serious concerns about accountability at senior management level. In June 2025, the committee called for PSIRA's CEO and CFO to be placed on precautionary suspension in relation to the serious concerns surrounding the training program. Yet, according to the committee's subsequent reporting, this issue remained unresolved. We therefore want to ask the acting minister directly, why have the CEO and CFO not been placed on precautionary suspension? This is not about declaring anyone guilty. It is about protecting an investigation, preserving evidence, and safeguarding public money. And now we have the SIU investigation. President Ramaphosa has signed Proclamation 316 of 2025, authorizing the SIU to investigate PSIRA and the UIF-funded training contracts, including allegations of maladministration, improper unlawful conduct, and financial losses to the state. The DA welcomes this investigation, but an investigation cannot become a substitute for accountability. We need to know, where does the SIU investigation currently stand? Has PSIRA provided all the relevant documentation? What steps are being taken to preserve and recover public funds? And when will Parliament receive a progress report? Honourable House Chair, this committee report also raises serious broader concerns about PSIRA. If PSIRA can claim 100% achievement while receiving a qualified audit opinion, facing serious governance concerns, and having nearly 130 million program investigated, then perhaps we need to question what PSIRA considers performance. We should be asking, are security officers properly trained and accredited? Are security companies compliant? Are firearms properly controlled? Are irregularities detected and acted upon? Are public funds protected? And when something goes wrong, are those responsible held accountable? These are the outcomes that matter to South Africans. The DA cannot support a culture where institutional performance is reduced to ticking boxes while serious governance failures remain unresolved. This report must not simply be noted and filed away. The committee must continue to monitor the SIU investigations, the recovery of public funds, the disciplinary processes, and the accountability of senior management. Honourable Speaker, PSIRA's mandate is too important for Parliament to be satisfied with performance statistics alone. It is worth noting that the committee did not complete the annual report last year, precisely because of the significant instability at the time. South Africans need fewer impressive numbers on paper and more results in reality. The DA supports robust parliamentary oversight of this report and calls for clear answers on the SIU investigation, the 30 million plus outstanding amount, the training program failures, and the continued position of the CEO and the CFO. I thank you.
The Honourable Moela.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. The African National Congress rises to support the report of the Portfolio Committee on Police on performance of the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority for 2024-2025 financial year. Honourable Chairperson, the private security industry is a vital partner in broader safety and security landscape of our country. It employs hundreds of thousands of South Africans and contributes meaningfully to protecting communities, businesses, and critical infrastructure. Proper regulation on this sector, therefore remains an important priority for us. Chairperson, we note the appreciation of the progress recorded by PSIRA during the year under review. The authority achieved 100% of its annual performance plan targets, an improvement of the previous year. More than 43,000 security officers inspection and over 9,000 business inspection were conducted. Enforcement actions resulted in the confiscation of 851 firearms, 1,265 arrests, and 245 finalized prosecution. Registration numbers increased, digital systems improved service turnaround times, and the authority posted a surplus of about 115 million within strengthened revenue and healthy liquidity. These operational gains demonstrated that PSIRA continues to fulfill its core regulatory mandate. At the same time, the committee has correctly identified areas that require further attention. The qualified audit opinion, challenges relating to system reconciliations, on the ongoing material irregularity linked to the UIF-funded training project remain matters that must be resolved. The committee has also highlighted the importance of finalizing the appointment of the new council so that full governance and accountability structures can be restored without delay. We welcome the confirmation that the process to appoint a new council is underway, with interviews scheduled. We trust that this process will be concluded speedily so that institutional stability can be fully reestablished. Chairperson, the ANC also emphasizes the importance of ensuring that serious enforcement activities translates to meaningful compliance across the private security industry. Inspections, arrests, and prosecutions must ultimately contribute to improved standards and safer communities. This requires PSIRA to continue strengthening its regulatory capacity and working closely with SAPS and other relevant institutions. The African National Congress supports the constructive recommendations contained in this report. This includes strengthening internal audit capacity, improving financial and contract management systems, and enhancing consequence management where necessary. We also support deeper collaboration with the South African Police Service on firearm oversight. The confiscation of 851 firearms demonstrates the importance of this function and its need for continued vigilance. Chairperson, as the private security industry continues to grow, regulation must keep pace with the changing security environment. PSIRA must strengthen compliance, professional standards, and training, while ensuring that security companies operate within the law. Stronger cooperation with SAPS will also be important in addressing firearm-related risk and strengthening oversight in this regard. The ANC believes that the continuous improvement in governance, accountability, and operational effectiveness will enable PSIRA to play an even stronger role in professionalizing the private security industry and contributing to safer communities. We therefore support this report, and we look forward to the implementation of the committee's recommendations in a spirit of constructive oversight and institutional strengthening. The African National Congress supports this report, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes this debate. You are again reminded that a decision on whether we are to adopt the report or not will only be taken in a full sitting of the National Assembly. That concludes the business of this virtual mini-plenary as well. This mini-plenary will now rise.